Hello my lovelies, and welcome to today's video. My name's Alya and I'm so glad you stopped by. So today we're talking about 3 rare diseases that barely ever see in clinic but are very manageable and just really interesting. So I hope you stick around and find out a little more about some rare eye diseases and about this wonderful new hat that I'm wearing. It's exciting because in clinic we don't obviously see it too often, otherwise there wouldn't be rare conditions, right? But before I get into all of that wonderful stuff, I want to talk to you guys about my new chapeau, my new hat. This is such an amazing little addition to my wardrobe. First of all, the color's fantastic. The colors that they come in are just so abundant and so fun, and there's patterns as well as different colors, and just really fun. And the best part of all is the girl who creates these is a beautiful young mum in Russia who can send anywhere around the world, and she's just building up her business at the moment, and I'm just so excited to be supporting her. So this is such a wonderful little hat. It's got much more to it than just covering my head, and look at this wonderful soft cushion at the back. It creates such a great shape. As some of you who watch the channel may know, I do wear my hair pretty high up. You can obviously choose to wear it a bit lower down for a slightly different shape, but it's not too big at the back, and it's pretty squashable, and you can move it higher, lower as well. And it stays on really well until you start mucking around with it like I just did. It stays on really well, so I didn't need to put on a non-slip headband or any of that stuff this morning. Very easy. Love it, absolutely love it. Really happy with it. Wore it for a few hours late last night as well, just to really give it a good wear. I was sort of sitting there doing some work on my laptop. It was comfortable. I forgot I had it on, to be honest. Went to the shower and kind of went, oh whoops, because with scarves they're comfortable, and non-slip headbands, I'm used to them. They're comfortable, they don't squash anything. I am pretty prone to headaches, so the fact that that I'm at the stage now where I don't feel my scarves is, it takes a lot of practice to figure out where you can tie your knots and things like that. But in this particular instance, there's no thought process to it. It's just comfortable. So definitely go ahead and support this beautiful brand. Let me just show you there. It's called the Push-Up Hat by Shoshilla. And it's just fantastic. So all these details will be available below in the description as well. Okay, so rare diseases are fun to diagnose as well. So a lot of the time they're not a worry to the patient. That's one of the biggest fun about them. Some rare diseases are just that. They are diagnosed, but the reason that they're rare sometimes is because they're not actually a trouble for the patient. The one I'd like to start by telling you about is the Child-Bonnet syndrome. This one's a great one. I've seen it about 3 or 4 times in 11, 12 years. And it's an interesting one because it's very hard to differentiate, because the people who experience Child-Bonnet syndrome are often already blind or partially blind. So it normally means that both eyes are having some sort of seeing problems. So I've seen it one time in a lady who has quite severe macular degeneration. So she's got pretty decent peripheral vision still, like I've spoken about in my other macular videos. You do retain your peripheral vision. So she had that, but when she was sitting in bed at night and trying to look around her room, so she didn't really have much chances because it was pretty dim in there anyway, plus she's got this huge central vision loss and she's trying to focus on things, so she's really challenging her visual system that's quite non-existent at this point, right? So her eyes can't detect central vision, her eyes can't detect color or detail. All she really relies on is her peripheral vision, and here she's sitting in a dark room late at night when she's probably also quite tired, and out of nowhere she feels like she sees a brick house sort of thing, or a brick wall. And she said that she felt like there was somebody kind of like building that wall or climbing that wall or doing something to this wall. And then she'd look away and it followed her for a moment, and then she sort of, it turned into sort of just colors, just colored squares and then triangles, and then it eventually dissipated. So this is very similar to what can happen during a migraine episode, especially that it changed shapes and colors later down the track. So it was really important just to make sure that we took a really good history and we made sure that there was nothing else going on. So that was the first thing, and it was definitely Child-Bonnet because the images she was seeing were just so vivid. Like it was actual characters and an actual brick wall. My own granddad often sees faces or people. His vision fluctuates, so he can go from being able to drive and being really good and just completely normal functional vision to really severe vision loss in a matter of days. He's got a corneal issue, so those things can fluctuate severely. He's complained to me that he sees people sometimes, and it really scares him. He thinks that there's someone in the corner of the room, or he's imagines things that aren't there, and he knows they're not there, right? And that's the difference. Another differential with Charles Bonnet is that these people are fully able-minded. It's not like they're going to be hallucinating for any other reasons, like drugs, like medication, or because they've kind of become a little bit challenged mentally. Sometimes that happens. No, nothing like that. These are completely otherwise normal people that either have a fluctuating vision or have lost their vision permanently. That was one non-clinical case. The other two clinical cases were from severe vision loss. One was due to glaucoma, and the other, I never actually got told why. We did send this lady off for MRIs and all these sort of things, and she's got a complex eye history, but she does see, and that was the only case that I've ever seen with Charles Bonnet where this person was sighted. And that was a really, really interesting one. She's a very, very capable, very intelligent person, so you knew she wasn't making it up. You could fully trust her history and everything like that, and I'd known her from she's one of my first patients I'd ever seen. So I knew she was completely capable and able and all that sort of stuff. And when she started to experience these periodical images in her vision, I basically pressed the panic button because none of the doctors wanted to listen to her. And I insisted that she get an MRI just to make sure that, God forbid, she's not having any kind of vascular changes in the brain that are giving her these illusions. And luckily, we did the MRI because we did find some changes that we were able to make sort of a move on. Nothing to do with the vision system, though. She just happens to be someone who's got, long-standing diabetes, and there were some changes and things like that. But that's I go off on a tangent there. We were able to diagnose her with the Charles Bonnet, and we were able to, regulate things to help her understand her symptoms. And once she understood, and this is something that's happened across the board, once they know what they're seeing, they no longer complain about it. Because it often happens when you're tired and at night, and it's when you're trying to strain your visual system, when you're really trying to do something your eyes shouldn't be able to do anymore. Another really cool disease that, again, it's of no consequence to the patient, which is really, it's really reassuring as a clinician to see things that aren't necessarily, going to create this big issue for my patients. It's really nice to sort of go, look, don't worry, we've got this. Don't get to say that often, but you do get to say it sometimes, and it's nice to be able to. The one I would love to tell you about next is Hemolacria. So lacrimal gland produces the tears, and hemo refers to blood. I'm going to get my double down today. So really, really cool, because very, 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 very unlikely for it to be anything severe. Very, very unlikely. Like, the fact that we don't really see it clinically in the first place, usually people have told us it happened and it's since stopped. The few times that I have dealt with it, like I said, you don't really get to see it per se. You just sort of have to believe them that they did have pink discharge or pink tears coming out of their eyes. So it's like you're crying blood, but it's not going to be like full on like in the movies where a drop of blood comes out of your eye. No, it's usually that when your eyes are weeping and the discharge is pink. So when people go to dab it with a tissue or something, it's pink on the tissue, and that freaks them out. And fair enough. And it often comes with a bit of discomfort or pain, or a little bit of inflammation around the eye. So people do get really worried. Now, my experience has said that something's trapped in the eye or in the lid, and when the tear forms, the lacrimal gland is all fine, the tear comes down clear, but it picks up pink discharge or maybe even blood inside the lid. So it's usually some sort of a scratch, or maybe a small chalazion has popped, like a small sty has popped and it's bleeding, so almost like a pimple in there. And it often isn't just pink, it's also got a bit of mucus associated with it, or some kind of discomfort to the eye, some sort of burning sensation, that sort of deal. It's never on its own. One case I've heard about, I didn't actually see it myself, that happened at the clinic, was actual blood coming out of someone's, every time they blew their nose, they would cry pink tears. Again, we're not talking about movies, we're not talking about like thick red blood or anything, just bloody tears. In that case, there was a very severe situation in the lacrimal duct, and that was coming up with any kind of like sort of blowing nose action that was kind of creating a bit of a reflux, and so whatever was happening inside there in the sinuses, that was coming out through the eye. And that can happen. A lot of the time we get these really, really strange symptoms, but actually once you dig into the anatomy of it and into the sort of trying to figure out how it all is happening, it's really quite benign. So lucky for our patients, none of these things are often terribly serious. But just like with the Charles-Bonnet syndrome, where sometimes you just have to do a neurological screen, you would want to do an MRI and you would want to sort of investigate it further, because you never know what your differential diagnosis might be. So what else could be causing it? You never want to assume it's nothing. You always want to check that it's not something else, and that you're not sort of missing a big old obvious thing staring you in the face. With this, I would always recommend the duct being flushed, the lids being checked, and making sure that there's nothing else going on. Good thing with the lacrimal system is it's very, very accessible. Like, it's all very surface. You know, our duct is right here, the drains are right there. It's all very easy to examine in a clinical setting. Probably not as easy to do it self-examine, just to do it to yourself, because it's all very microscopic, but it is very possible. Okay, the last one I'm really excited to talk about today is coloboma. So coloboma refers to any kind of incomplete seal. When we refer to the eye, it's obviously full of round things. You have a sphincter muscle for the iris, you have a round ball for the eyeball, you have a round connection, sort of like this, around the optic nerve. The optic nerve itself is round. There's a lot of circles when we look inside the eye. So coloboma, so when we form, things are initially just fissures. People are usually more familiar with the way a child's head is formed. For example, we have sort of 3 plates and they sort of just seal together, and you have this little triangle in the middle when the baby's very young, soft spot on the top of their head, that, you know. So the eye is not dissimilar. Things, or all sort of round things in the body, form in a similar manner. Things just basically come together and then form the circle. Imagine you're making chocolate eggs or something like that. You kind of get 2 halves and you have to sort of, you know, wet the border and stick it together. Well, it's kind of like that, except it's all growing from the same spot, and then it sort of sprouts out and then comes together to form the full circle. Just to sort of give you a visual comparison. You know, a lot of flowers bloom the same way. A lot of things in nature repeat on themselves. So lucky for us, we can study that and understand that. So taking what we know already, sometimes these formations don't complete, and you end up with a hole. And the hole kind of just looks like a bit of a cyst, or a bit of a space in the structure. And again, it's something that is interesting to diagnose, because they're not always obvious. The bigger ones would be, because what else could it possibly be? But the smaller ones aren't. And you sort of start to worry about things like traumatic holes forming, you know, things that have happened post factum. And honestly, they're so rare. They're so rare. I've seen a handful now, but again, it's probably more common in children's clinics to see these things. By the time people get to be adults, they're well and truly diagnosed, and nobody worries about it anymore, because, you know, functionally it usually means nothing. But occasionally you get a coloboma in the iris, or you get sort of an incomplete iris or disformed iris. And when that happens, that's very disruptive, because what happens is the iris is responsible for the shape of our pupil. And if your pupil's not perfectly round and perfectly responding to light, you cannot monitor how much, or cannot regulate how much light is coming into your eye. So it's a bit like an overexposed photo all the time. So then the brain has to come into the party and figure out how to regulate how much image is being interpreted. And that gets complicated, and that gets very individualized. So what we do for these patients is really quite straightforward. You prescribe a contact lens. Now, when you prescribe a contact lens, especially for a young child, there's a lot of business that comes with that. You know, you've got to train the child and the parents in how to look after this contact lens. You've got to avoid, you know, any kind of infections that can happen. There are long-term consequences to wearing contact lenses really regularly. All the things. So you've got to be very careful. So a lot of the time, to begin with these children, we start with just tinted glasses. Now, the tint doesn't exactly replace the pupil size being normal or the iris being complete, but what it does do is it limits how much light is coming in, and it just allows glare to be moderated. And depending on the severity of the pupil distortion, you get different kinds of syndrome. So sometimes, you know, kids aren't able to focus and they develop other kinds of things as a result, and at other times it's really not a big deal at all. So again, it's about severity, but a lot of the times when you diagnose these things, and a lot of pupil distortions happen due to trauma. So you know, when I see it, I just always assume something's happened first, and then I ask and find out, and hopefully nothing's happened. But the beautiful thing about these diseases is they're all very manageable. and they're all very, you can easily live with any of these. And, you know, to an ophthalmologist or to a clinician, you just help the patient, and it's one of the more rewarding things to cope with in clinic. As always, my lovelies, I hope that today's video was very informative and you learned a little bit more about rare eye diseases. I'm so fascinated with these things. As I mentioned, don't get to see them too often in clinic, thank goodness, but every so often you do get a problem that isn't really a problem. It's a diagnosis, sure, it's something you need to manage, sure, but it's so relieving when you don't have an actual problem for the patient, and they can just get on with their lives and they just know that they have this thing, but it's of no big consequence. Very nice consultation when you get to say that. If you like today's video and you want to see more, please do subscribe. There's a big old red box down below. Go ahead and click it, make it turn grey, and become a part of this creative family. For more bits and bobs, head over to Instagram. There's always stuff going on there, definitely more often than here, and there's lots to check out, so please do go ahead and follow me there. Wherever you are around the world, my lovelies, I hope you're having an amazing day. You're staying safe and healthy, happy, and I can't wait to see you on the next one. Bye.